Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, welcome back to the show.
Jim, it's a pleasure to be back.
John, West Haven Ventures took a drop this week after reporting additional holes for the Shovel Nose project. What spooked the market?
Well, the market had some pretty high expectations for hole number 2. Back in March 18th, they published the results for hole 1, which was pretty good. It was it infilled the strike and showed, yes, the vein 1 is continuing along strike. That's all great. But hole 2 they described as having 44 meters of Ginguro, visible gold, pyrite, real juicy looking stuff. And in the past, that has been code for some pretty spectacular gold silver grades, which is why the Shovel Nose play, the South Zone in particular, became such a hot story at the end of last year. But what they ended up publishing was 18 meters of 3.7 gram per ton gold and 32 gram per ton silver, followed by a 27 meter gap of nothing, and then a half meter of 13.65 gram gold and 36.5 gram silver. And that was not kind of what you expect when somebody says we have 44 meters of juicy looking core. Now that was one thing that disappointed the market. The second one was hole number 3, which they drilled to the northeast. It was designed to test the hypothesis that there is a second parallel vein which had been hit farther down dip in one of the earlier holes. And the grade of it wasn't that great, but they figured, there's a certain elevation, a 100-meter interval, where it seems that the bonanza zones all dropped out and formed these very high-grade intervals. And so this hole was spotted to intersect that, and it didn't. Instead, it ran into this andesite rock, which of course, it is not the host for this mineralization. The host is the rhyolite rock, and the andesite is associated with the magnetic highs in that area. And they've published a map showing magnetic low and magnetic high. And past exploration tended to have been focused on in areas of magnetic high, which is why this whole Spencis Bridge gold belt has not really yielded anything particularly interesting, just sort of low-grade stuff. And it was the higher grades that they started getting last year within the rhyolite host that made the light bulb go off and said, we need to track down the rhyolite, which tends to have a lower magnetic susceptibility than the andesite. So that means the hope for a parallel vein for now has been snuffed out, and the getting lower grades than expected. Well, the market did not particularly like that. Now, one of the holes they also did, hole number 4, they undercut one of the holes, hole 15, which was the spectacular hole, and it came up with mediocre grades, which is confirming what they're starting to concede, that there is really within this low sulfidation epithermal vein system a 100-meter vertical extent, which is going to be the place where all the high grade exists. Then they took hole number 5, and that was to the northwest, and that stepped out 50 meters, and it infilled and showed, that's fine. So that was okay. It wasn't spectacular grades, but they were along the lines that you would expect for this system. The 29 meters of 3 gram gold, 14 gram silver, and within it a 1.5 meter interval of 1 ounce gold and 4 ounce silver, and that's what you want to expect. But what is interesting is when they stepped to the southeast of hole 15, they did a 40-meter step out. And the big disappointment late last year was they had done a 100-meter step out. That was hole 19, and it had come up with nothing. They had been too aggressive. They had projected the trend of the vein, and they came up with nothing. However, this hole 6, and they have not yet published assays, they have indicated that they have intersected the vein. And right now they're a little gun shy about using visual descriptions in core after the shellacking they got in the market earlier this week. And they've drilled another hole from the same setup, number 7, which is designed to intersect the projected vein structure 70 meters southeast from hole 15. And they haven't said what that intersected, that may or may not have it, but hole number 8, its location is very interesting. And what they are now doing is they're drilling geological holes to sort out with what happens to this vein system to the south. And one interpretation which I suggested is, what they hit in hole 19 is the lower part of the low sulfidation epithermal vein system, and the entire system has been uplifted, and the juicy part has been eroded away. So the thing is basically gone to the southeast. And but hole number 8 is spotted about 128 meters to the northeast from where hole number 19 was drilled, and it is designed to test the hypothesis that the vein system has been fault offset somewhat to the northeast, not up faulted, but simply offset. And so this is a very critical hole. It's just underway now. I don't know if they've even intersected bedrock now. This is a whole overburden covered area. But if this hole can establish that this high-grade vein system was merely offset to the southeast, well, then they have 2 kilometers of running room, because that's the sort of linear mag low anomaly that it has a bit of a jog over and then continues to the southeast. So if this system got them placed within this rhyolite unit, and there is this structural control to it, and the juices came up, and they can establish that it continues over here, then it's game on again for stitching this whole thing together. But right now, if you take the 490-meter strike that they've established and assume that the juice is only going to be in a 100-meter vertical extent, and then do say a 10-meter mineable width, a 2.6 specific gravity, you come up with about 1.33 million tons. If you want to make it wider, you can get more. But then it becomes a question of grade. So we're talking about right now what they have outlined, maximum probably 1 million ounce system, which is still impressive, and it's a good start, and the company's pretty upset that the market was so brutal with its punishment. But what the market wants is it wants to see a 5 million ounce plus discovery, a world-class discovery with medium to high-grade gold, silver, and that story for the moment is stalled. They may drill another hole after this 8th one, depending on what Peter Fischel sees in the core, because right now they're trying to reconstruct the geology and see where this system is, and then they'll take a break and come back later with additional drilling, and hopefully we get the green light that they found where this zone continues. They've also done a lot more work on interpreting the geophysics elsewhere in the property, and there are untested linear mag-low trends which could be something similar. So that's part of what we'll be hoping to see later this year, is that these high-grade, low sulfidation epithermal system is associated with these rhyolite units that are showing up as these mag lows, and that there are many such trends within this shovel nose property, and possibly within the whole Spence's Bridge belt trend, which all that other land, about 75% of it is now owned by Sable Resources. They are in the process of transferring that into a CSE shell called Talisker, so that can raise money and follow up whatever success West Haven Ventures has at the Shovel Nose project.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, are there any new developments in the James Bay region where Midland is now awaiting results for its initial drill program at Mithril?
Well, the market has gone quite quiet. Midland itself is not trading much volume. For a while there were buyers at the $1.30 level. The selling that started in early March that seemed to have come from the original prospect generator backers of Midland, that seems to have disappeared. The more recent selling seems to be coming from Quebec Inc., the various institutions that back Quebec plays. But now the market knows we're maybe 1-2 weeks away from Midland being in receipt of assays for the first few holes drilled on that 4-kilometer Mithril target. And because there are no leaks or anything about what these results are going to look like, the market is becoming very nervous. And we are in the 8th year of a bear market. We're seeing, gold has retreated down to $12.75. If you look at the charts of resource sector companies, there is capitulation happening across the boards. The charts are all dipping down. It's like the entire market is saying the resource sector is hopeless, it's doomed, gold's never going to ever go up and do anything, and nobody's ever going to find anything world-class and substantial. It might, as with West Haven, have some initial signs of promise, but then reality will set in, and it's all going to become, mediocre and not be something significant until, of course, it doesn't. So, there are, however, some new developments. Last week, I mentioned that I have been recommending to my subscribers a junior, which I regard as a sort of a third-tier area player in this James Bay region. Midland, of course, is my top pick because it owns the Mithril showing itself with the boulder field and the underlying IP anomaly, and they have done substantial staking, a long trend in the region. They have knowledge about the geology, what's relevant, that gives them an advantage of everybody over everybody else. They are out there staking other stuff. So if there's something big going on here in the copper department, Midland is the one that's going to have it. Azimut would be my second pick because it is clearly on trend to the west, and the news that they published last week about the lake bottom sediment survey showing a substantial copper anomaly on trend to the west, that's telling me the scale of this copper system is very substantial. And we may not get confirmation of world-class intervals in May when we get all the results from those 10 to 12 holes Midland drilled, but I suspect we're going to get enough confirmation that there is something really serious going on that can give a foundation to a great Canadian area play. Now, this company, which I'm no longer reluctant to keep a secret, it's called 92 Resources Corp. It's easier to call it NTY, which is its symbol. It's one of these companies in Dave Hodges' Zimtu stable, has about 104 million shares fully diluted. Its focus has been lithium projects in the past few years. It has about 4 of them in the James Bay region. The most important one was the Corvette project, And it turns out that the Corvette project is this triangular-shaped claim staked mainly to cover a pegmatite trend within a greenstone belt, and it happens to be just to the east of Midland's Mithril block, and then Mithril has staked everything along trend to the east. So this block of claims existed well before the Mithril discovery was made, and inside it is an inlier that is owned by Osisko Mining. It covers about 3/4 of the pegmatite dike trend, which is going to host the spodumene, that is the mineral that will have the lithium in it. And last year, the NTY spent 4 months negotiating with Osisko to option 75% of that particular inlier block so that they could have 100% of this pegmatite trend. And that was all wrapped up before the Mithril discovery happened. Well, last week, there was a surprise announcement that Osisko Mining has agreed to include another block that it has to the west, which it had staked to cover the greenstone belt for its gold potential, and where there have been some, showings in that found in the past. They agreed to throw that into the FCI East agreement so that FCI West, there's a block of claims in the middle that's owned by somebody else, so that NTY can earn 75% by spending several $1 million on both those properties. And that made that little junior very interesting because it isn't really clearly on trend. Part of the property's on trend with the Mithril system, but at this point we don't quite know for sure where this will trend to. But it is the closest junior, and it's very cheap with $103 million fully diluted. It has a market valuation of less than $10 million. All these other ones like Midland and Azimut, they're up there in the $50 to $100 million valuation. To go higher, they need confirmation that what's going on at Mithril has a lot of running room, whereas this company is cheap because it's a kind of junior that should have been rolled back and given a new life. It is very liquid. It's got an overhang of about 12 million flow-through shares done at 5 cents in late December. That comes free trading this weekend and could be another big source of supply for the market. So this is the stock that the traders are getting really interested in, and that's the one I've been saying, if you like to gamble on great Canadian area plays, go after NTY, and then these other ones, be aware that if Midland does disappoint us in the next little while, those ones may pull back, but this one probably will not, because it now has 3 possibilities. One is it can, properly explore that lithium pegmatite dike. It can now look at the gold potential on that Osisko ground to the west, and it can also see if anything from the Mithril system projects into the northern part of the Corvette project. But here's another angle that's really interesting. The market's nervous that Midland's going to report results that are not world-class barn burner intersections. And there's a good chance that they will not do that. But the body language and all that says that this is not going to be something like Evrim, where you have a bunch of great surface showings and you drill underneath and you've got absolutely nothing except egg on your face. I think when Gino Roger says in June when we go back onto the property, we're going to have 2, maybe 3 drill rigs going, he's not necessarily telling us that they have fantastic discovery holes and are going to delineate a world-class deposit within that 4-kilometer trend that they drilled. What he's telling us is that they're seeing enough in what they have drilled and learning enough about this system whose, deposit type is not easy to classify, to tell them we are in a candy store whose potential we have yet to completely figure out. And to remind people of an example, I'd like to take them back to 1994, October, when Diamond Fields drilled this Reed Brook intrusive-related dike and got, good copper nickel grades over, half-decent intervals, but it was a dike. It was high grade. It helped the stock get promoted to $12. It was clearly overpriced in terms of whatever sort of tonnage estimates you could make from looking at the strike at this dike. But what happened in the first quarter of 1995, after they'd done geophysics over the whole area, they had this big ring EM anomaly. And they were drilling the ring itself, and they were coming up with nothing and scratching their heads wondering what's going on. And somebody said, you know what? The reason it's a ring in the middle that's got nothing in it is because the conductivity is so high, it's off scale and hasn't been recorded by the machine. Put your drill in the middle and see what happens. And so they did, and they pulled 100 meters of engine block that ran 4% nickel and 3% copper. And of course it was a magmatic segregation type system, and everybody understood immediately that that entire nothingness inside that ring was actually a giant 30 million ton massive sulfide deposit, and we were off to the races. And the reason I tell this story is that in the beginnings of a great Canadian area play, you may not start off with the discovery right where the really world-class deposit is located. And you have to think back in 2011 when the government geologist was set down in every square kilometer to map the rocks that were visible and happened to collect the sample. That was a pure coincidence. And when Gino's team arrived last year to check this out and ran around with their beep mats and found all these boulders, well, that was all in that area. And when they did their IP survey early this year, well, they were guided to this area. But when you look at sort of the scale of this thing, 20, 30 kilometer trend with the western part now clearly having a significant lake bottom copper anomaly going on, this is a big copper bearing system. And last week, while I was sort of browsing through the latest Midland presentation, I came to the magnetic EM map that they had of the area, and there were 4 circles of EM conductors. Now, when they first published the results of the MAG-EM survey, there were no EM conductors to talk about associated with the IP chargeability anomaly that they have just drilled. And Azimuth, when it published its MAG-EM survey results, also had no strong EM conductors to talk about, except ones quite far to the west that may not be related to this copper system. Now, these ones may be sort of third-order derivative ones, very subtle, but obviously for Midland it was important to circle them on the map. And they are to the south of that FCI West block that has just been included in that 75% NTY auction. And the border is 5 kilometers from that east-west mithril trend, and these targets, these conductors, are right on the border. Obviously, there was no sampling done because the lines that they've plotted up in their diagrams showing where the copper fizzles out, the grid for the sampling was done in this east-west trend. But it may be that what this system's all about has yet to be discovered. And that's why even though this NTY property seems to be off the trend, its proximity and the fact that nobody actually understands what the controls are for any mineralization or where it really piled up, that means this little obscure junior has the potential to become a trading banshee if we get a green light for this play to take off. And hopefully I haven't jinxed everything by doing this, but I have created a James Bay Plan Nord resource center at Kaiser Research online. Looking at it is unrestricted. I've created an index of all the companies in that big James Bay region. I think this region is underexplored. I think Midland's mithril discovery has enough juice in it that there's not going to be a disappointing set of results. It would be nice if we had world-class confirmation right away. I suspect that will come later this year if things unfold in the normal manner, such as it did with the Voisey's Bay discovery. And you can go there, you can see the market activity, you can check stuff out, you can pick the ones that you want to follow, and whether or not this takes off right away into a great Canadian area play, the James Bay Plan Nord area is one of the last frontiers left in Canada, the Quebec government is very supportive of developing access and infrastructure in this region. It already has the Éléonore gold mine in it. It has the Renard diamond mine in it. And there's a lot of very interesting geology that has only been superficially explored with grassroots. And that's also where you can find a great Canadian area play, where it is an exploration frontier. And if we're dealing with something like an unusual new deposit that isn't so readily visible because of its peculiar nature, well, that whole region could become, by this time next year, it could be the hottest play in the world.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, can you give our Discovery Watch audience a story that doesn't require the price of gold to go up, or a no-brainer world-class discovery hole, or aliens dropping some giant nugget in the middle of your backyard?
Well, about a month ago, one of my subscribers asked me to check out a junior, a coal junior, and I do not like coal stories, thermal coal. I think it's a dying sector, and it's generally a big company thing. But to do the favor, I said, okay, I'll look at it. And as I dug into it, I became quite interested and fascinated by this little junior, and it trades around 50, 60 cents, and it had been as cheap as 10, 15 cents. Several years ago when they did a 51 million unit financing at 15 cents. But the coal that this is about is metallurgical coal, and metallurgical coal is an essential ingredient to steel making, and steel making is going to be part of the human future for, well, I guess as long as we continue to exist in physical form and don't get turned into some sort of alien type distributed being that doesn't require physical things anymore. The company is called Colonial Coal International Corp, and I made it a favorite several weeks ago, and it has about 200 million shares fully diluted, so it has a valuation of about almost $100 million right now. And the question is, what is this story about? Why is it interesting? Well, it has two projects, Huguenot and Flatbed, which is up in that portion of northeastern British Columbia on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, where there's a belt of metallurgical coal deposits. And big ones like Quintet and Bull Moose have been mined out by Teck. There were a lot of these deposits, coal seams discovered in the 70s. The best ones were developed. These two deposits were sort of looked at but discarded, not good enough. Well, the entire belt up there is now completely owned by major mining companies. There's Teck in there, there's Glencore in there, there's Anglo is in there, and then there are various Asian companies that also have these metallurgical coal deposits. Now, the interesting story is the man behind Colonial Coal is Dave Austin, and he was involved with a company called Western Coal Corporation, which in the prior decade, it had picked up a deposit in this area, and this company ended up being bought out for $3.3 billion, sort of eight years ago, or something like that. And he had gone off and picked up these other deposits, or what they weren't really deposits. They were sort of appearances of deposits, and they had put them into this shell company, which became Colonial Coal. And since then, they've done all the work to produce 43-101 resource estimates. They've completed PEAs on them that give them sort of billion-dollar valuations. And obviously, you're not going to get a $2 billion buyout for this. But what started to happen in the last while is in the sort of southeastern part of in the sort of Crow's Nest area of the Rocky Mountains in Alberta and in BC, there is a company called Riversdale, which is a private company backed by Resource Capital Funds, which owns 48%. It has received a hostile offer from the Hancock, which is an Australian entity owned by the richest person in Australia, and they are fighting this back. And so we're at the beginning of a wave of trying to tie down these metallurgical coal assets because those are going to be part of the future. Now, back in the Western Canada coal days, there were a couple of Indian companies that were the first to put bids in there for several $100 million on Western coal. And they were soon left behind in the dust. A Chinese entity came along and offered $800 million. And then Cliffs, which wanted to create a vertically integrated steel-making capacity in North America, it came along with $1.6 billion bid. And in the end, an American company called Walter Energy bought it for $3.3 billion. Now that was some time ago. Now we are sort of 8 years on, and people talk about the India supercycle, and I'm pretty dismissive about the India supercycle because I don't think it will kick in until 2025 and beyond, and so it's not going to make any difference to metal prices until then. It's not going to bail us out of the 8th year of our bear market today. But India has a metallurgical coal problem. It has a substantial steel-making industry, but its metallurgical coal resources are depleting. And so they are potentially much more aggressive and interested in tying down these last two deposits in this part of northeastern British Columbia. So the junior Colonial Coal has pretty much said, okay, we are not going to spend more money upgrading this to, say, pre-feasibility level. This is a big company type of story. We did do that with Western Canada Coal, and we went from a roller coaster, up to $8, back to 50 cents during the crash, and then eventually taken out at over $11. We're not going to go and pretend we're going to build this ourselves. So what has started now is the marketing phase where the goal is to try and coax a buyer. And while the Indian steelmaking companies are clear potential buyers for this, the one project, the flatbed, is right next door to Teck's operations. And so this might be something that Teck might want to own and not leave for somebody else to snap up. And Huguenot is next to the Anglo's operations that it has there, so maybe Anglo would like to wrap this up. So we are in the beginning of the stages where the goal with this asset, if you do comparables with, say, the Riversdale one, which admittedly is more advanced, it's at the feasibility stage, one could see a valuation several times the current price. Now, we're not talking about something like NTY, some 7-cent stock going to like $2, going up 20, 30 times in price. And the original question was, what can we do that doesn't require gold to go to the moon or some monster discovery hole to make some money in this space? In this space, it's become really, really tough. So I'm introducing Colonial Coal as a Discovery Watch story, not because there's anything left to discover in terms of ounces or tons or whatever in the ground, or for any metal price to go up. The metallurgical coal price is around $175 to $180 per ton, but it's to discover whether or not there is an appetite coming from India that will be matched by the existing players in this region to tie up the last of the met coal deposits in this part of northeastern British Columbia, that is owned by an independent junior company.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.